Welcome back. You're still watching World Insight with me, Tian, with the program coming to you live from Beijing. Now let's turn to Hong Kong, where demonstrations continue to rock the city for a third month. On Sunday, the unrest spiraled into arson, vandalism, and road-blocking riots that shut down mass transit operations, bringing the heart of the city to a standstill. This came even after Hong Kong Chief Executive Carrie proposed 4 measures last week to quell the unrest in Hong Kong. These were withdrawing this fugitive bill, appointing new members to the IPCC, conducting more direct dialogue with communities, and seeking advice from community leaders, professionals, and academics. 14 weeks into the Hong Kong unrest, will these 4 measures be enough to lift Hong Kong out of its current predicament? Can formally withdrawing the bill help broker a dialogue between the SAR government and various parties? On the sidelines of this year's China Development Forum special session in the autumn, I went one-on-one with Martin Jacques, a senior fellow at the Cambridge University and author of the international bestseller When China Rules the World. As an observer who had lived in Hong Kong for years, he minced no words about the importance of leadership and Hong Kong's development dilemma now. What do you make of the latest proposals given by the chief executive in Hong Kong?
Well, I very much welcome the statement. I think it was very necessary. The question is, what effect will it have on these hardline young demonstrators that have been rampaging around Hong Kong? The other aspect to it is the call for reconciliation and discussions and
dialogue.
And so now, I think that dialogue is crucial, and this is a great test, I think, of the administration. Can it do it? Does it know how to do this? These things are very difficult to do. And so you've got to find ways of persuading people who have been really totally opposed to you to engage in this dialogue.
How do you see, Martin, the role of leadership? Many say the quality of it these days particularly, it's about managing crisis. How much do you think the chief executive, together with her team, will be able to learn how to do it for the near future?
Well, this is a great test.
It's a great test.
I can't answer the question.
It's a big learning curve.
It is, because they've not had to do anything like this before. In fact, it's very much a government as an administration rather than government as a leadership, is my feeling about the way the Hong Kong government is historically constructed and operates. So this is going to be a huge challenge for them, and that doesn't mean they can't rise to the occasion. It's very important that they do rise to the occasion.
Right. Now, there are different commentaries about the young people in the streets. I'm not saying the rioters, but rather the people who has been coming out with a good heart, trying to make a point about what they want to achieve in Hong Kong. Some people say they are naive, politically naive. Others say, well, these are young people who are determined to see a better future of Hong Kong from their perspective. What do you say, Martin?
Well, what I think is that, first of all, the demonstrations against the extradition bill, particularly the one with, what, 3 million on it, was huge. I can't see how that doesn't represent a majority of Hong Kong opinion. In other words, you have to listen to that, because if you don't listen to it, you'll never win over Hong Kong, and the situation, quite frankly, will over time get worse and worse and worse, and it will become ungovernable. The second point is, of course, to distinguish between that and the violent demonstrations, the hardline demonstrations, with much bigger demands and so on. But there's something to listen to there as well, I think. Always listen to those who are against you, because they're telling you something. And I think that a lot of young people, I don't know how many, in Hong Kong, remember these are all kids born post-handover
Yes.
don't feel there's much of a future in Hong Kong. There's a sort of desperation. This is the biggest challenge of all. This is even bigger than doing the dialogue, is, okay, what have we been doing wrong and how can we do it in a different way? And you know, the truth of the matter is that since the handover, Hong Kong hasn't made much progress. The problems of Hong Kong are really to recreate the economy, I think, actually, in a very profound sense, because it's got financial services, tourism, and land, property. You know, this is an old-style economy. And so what's needed, I mean, it's always had huge inequality of wealth. The inequality has got worse. The property prices now are such that most young people know they could never afford anywhere. So they don't really feel beyond the point they've got a great stake in Hong Kong society. Now, this is something that the Chinese government in China has been brilliant at. But in Hong Kong, over the last 22 years, we've not seen anything like enough progress in this direction. I mean, for example, what is the land problem? The land problem is an old colonial problem which nothing has been done about, which is basically it was the source of a lot of the wealth of the tycoons. And they restrict the land supply, and therefore they restrict the building of housing. And the LegCo and the Hong Kong government have not been able to do anything about it, maybe because of a lack of will, or I don't know why. But that is one of the first things that has to be changed.
None of this is easy. Of course, the chief executive have already promised to establish academic committees to study the problems and try to provide policy suggestions. Now, how much do you think these issues can be handled as an efficient matter or in an efficient way?
I don't think it's a matter of efficiency. I think it's a shift in thinking. I think it's a shift of paradigms.
What do you mean?
Well, basically, and I understand the reasons for this, the Hong Kong government felt they could basically carry on. In fact, their job, their task was to carry on,
yes,
to be honourable. And they have been honourable to one country, two systems. They've been very honourable to it. But basically, they've thought in status quo terms. And the status quo has meant, basically, that Hong Kong is in some form of stasis, of paralysis. It hasn't moved. You know, there's no equivalent in Hong Kong of what we've had in China, reform and opening up. We don't want reform and opening up in Hong Kong in the same way because it's not appropriate. But Hong Kong needs a reform strategy. And the absence of that has left many people alienated. And I think the fact that the young people are particularly at the source of this in some senses is a warning sign. The young are the future. And so although the kids that are going out and behaving abominably are, you know, are not in any way to be condoned, they are representing something,
right,
a feeling amongst a lot of young people, I suspect.
What about the young people? I mean, of course, they are, most of them are raised up after the return of Hong Kong to the motherland. But many also argue there has been a lack of understanding about the history of China as a whole, and also whether the young people knows well the root causes of the problem inside Hong Kong, and would be able to willing, together with the local government, to handle these issues from their perspective. So, Martin, any advice for the young people who are certainly good-hearted when they went onto the street at the very beginning?
I think that they're very short-sighted. But I mean, what do you expect? You know, when you're 18, 19, yes, 20, 21, you know,
do not have much reference to fall on.
Exactly. You don't know much, but you do think things strongly, and you have certain, and you do think about where you are and where it's going, yeah, and what it's been like. So they, you know, you always have to listen to young people. They're very important to listen to, I think. I think that the great problem facing the Hong Kong government and Chinese government with Hong Kong is that 156 years of British colonialism is a very, very long time, many, many generations. And so Hong Kong is totally different from mainland China. I mean, 96% might be Chinese and look Chinese and everything else, but they are not like the mainlanders. They don't have the same culture or anything. To deal with the problems of Hong Kong, that's a tricky question, because you don't go from that situation to people recognizing the value and importance of the new relationship with China in a short space of time.
Yeah.
It happened more easily in Macau, but Macau was a quite different example. Hong Kong had been much more successful than Macau. So therefore, the people of Hong Kong had a certain identity and swagger, and, if I can say it, arrogance about themselves. And now they have to be persuaded. Over time, it's a slow task, slower than I thought it would be. Shall I tell you something? 50 years won't be long enough to win the hearts and minds of the Hong Kong Chinese. So let's be realistic about the timescale that this is going to demand.
The other thing is what this recent development has created about the ill feelings of different people, for example, social groups in Hong Kong among themselves, and also between those in Hong Kong and on the mainland. Now, public opinion is very important these days in any style of governance. So, Martin, what do you make of this? And as you said, things are not likely to clear up immediately. As we all know, all the efforts takes time. So, what kind of situation are we going to see from now on?
To try and find the ways in which Hong Kong, the new generation of Hong Kong, look to China and relate to China. And it's not in some ways so difficult, because just over the border is Shenzhen, one of the most remarkable phenomena of our time. You know, one of the great global cities. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if it won't be before long, it will be regarded as the best global city in the world for a period. Hong Kong did try in the 90s to do something like Shenzhen and failed miserably. Shenzhen has succeeded magnificently. So what we need, I think, what needs to be encouraged are the linkages between the young Hong Kong people and what is happening in Shenzhen. So let's have young Hong Kong students and so on doing internships at Tencent, at Huawei, at all the other startup companies and so on. Get a feel for Shenzhen society, not ram it down their throats, but give them the pathway of opportunity, which they can, then they can see China in a different way. Not, oh, China is about the extradition and so on, but look, China is a land of economic dynamism and opportunity. We need a slice of that, because the future of the Hong Kong economy has always been actually about China, now even more so.
Martin, what a pleasure talking to you. Always quite very insightful views about what's going on in Hong Kong. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us.
Thank you.
We appreciate it.
Thank you.